Manager slaps the new hire who uses a wheelchair and leaves the whole office stunned, in shock. The slap cracked across Sean's face in the middle of the hallway, Brian's hand leaving his skin burning while the wheelchair's wheels scraped the floor under his co-worker's silence. "This is just the start of the hell you're going to go through for taking my sister's life," growled Brian, the company's manager, his face inches from Sean's, his voice bitter. "She ran the red light. It wasn't my fault. I paid a heavy price too," Sean said, out of breath, pointing to his motionless legs in the chair, reminding him that the very same car accident had taken Brian's sister's life and destroyed his own future. She was in a rush because her son got hurt at school. She was running to help him, and now that kid's growing up without a mother because of you," Brian shouted, eyes burning with rage. "I'm sorry." "I'll be sorry for the rest of my life," Sean said, head down, voice trembling with guilt. "Hiring you was the best idea I've ever had. I'm going to make you pay day after day, and reporting me won't help because no one can save you from me," Brian whispered with a short, harsh laugh, turning his back and leaving the air heavy. Sean blinked hard, hand to his cheek, thinking of calling the police when his phone buzzed with a photo of the clinic door where his mother, Nicole, was in treatment. His hands went cold. "Go ahead and try and I'll stop by there today," Brian said in a voice message, cold, calculating, while the clinic image stayed on the screen like a clenched fist. Sean closed his eyes for a second and his heart pounded. He didn't need more words. This was a direct threat against his mother. If he went to the police, if he asked anyone for help, Brian would follow through. There was no simple way out, no report that wouldn't become fuel for his hate. But then, when everything seemed to close in, a new light appeared. Kylie, a finance assistant who had already helped Sean with workplace adjustments, stepped in with resolve and rolled his chair toward the break room, away from prying eyes. "This morning, Brian asked me for your mother's address, saying it was to finish your hiring paperwork. I handed it over because I didn't think it was a problem. But after what just happened in the hallway, I'm scared he'll use it against you," Kylie said, voice firm but eyes worried. "He already did," Sean replied, showing his phone with a trembling hand. "Look at the photo I just got and the audio with it. He said if I try to report him, he'll swing by the clinic today," Sean added, swallowing hard. "My God!" Kylie whispered in shock, hand over her mouth. "Sean, I'm so sorry. I never would have given it if I had known. I had no idea," she said, voice cracking. "It's not your fault," Sean answered, steady despite his drawn face. "There's no way you could have guessed what's between us." "What is between you two?" Kylie asked, voice unsteady, leaning forward, desperate to understand. "I've never told anyone here at the company," Sean said, taking a breath, making it clear he'd kept this as a secret. "It was an accident at an intersection. His sister ran a red light and hit my car. She died instantly, and I survived, but lost movement in my legs," Sean explained, voice heavy, each word dropping like lead. Kylie put a hand to her chest, hardly believing what she was hearing. "I only found out he was her brother after I signed the contract," Sean continued, bitter. "I thought about refusing the job right then, but I couldn't," he said, eyes lowered, weighed down by helplessness. "Why couldn't you?" Kylie asked, confused, trying to understand his choice. "The rent was late. My mom needed her meds, and I had almost no chance of getting hired anywhere," Sean said quietly, honestly, admitting to a burden he couldn't put down. "The investigation concluded there was no legal fault, because she ran the red light," Sean said, eyes glassy, breath held. "But none of that brings me peace when I see a photo of her little boy, the kid who grew up without a mom. That eats me alive every day," he added, gripping the wheels of his chair. "He's turning that guilt into a weapon against you," Kylie said, angry, eyes fixed on Sean. One afternoon, the wheelchair Sean used inside the company slipped on the stockroom ramp, and he only kept from tipping over by grabbing the handrail in a jerk that wrenched his shoulders. "I almost hit the floor," Sean said, heart racing, staring at the wheel of the chair he used only at work, the one that stayed there overnight. Adrian, the building's longtime doorman and a friend to Sean, appeared with a wrench in hand, brows sweaty like someone who watched more than he was supposed to. "I saw who messed with this chair," Adrian said, serious, straight to the point. "Early this morning I saw Brian prowling this floor with a cup of coffee and a pocket full of screws," Adrian said, pointing to the loosened wheel lock. "The lock was loosened on purpose. This isn't wear and tear," Adrian said, showing the loose piece between his fingers. "He doesn't just want to humiliate me. He wants me to get hurt again so he can call it karma," Sean said, voice trembling with indignation. "You can't wait for his next blow. You need to get out of his reach," Adrian advised, reflexively squeezing the wrench. "I thought about asking for a transfer, but this morning I got a message that said, 'Transfer's fine.'" "Your mum's still here," Sean said, staring at his phone. "This man's crossed every line. You can't ignore it anymore," Adrian said, shaking his head, outraged. "Thanks for telling me, Adrian. I'll think about what to do. You've already done a lot by warning me," Sean said sincerely, extending his hand in respect. "If you need me, say the word," Adrian answered, gripping Sean's hand firmly and meeting his eyes. With a heavy heart, Sean moved away and headed to the break room, determined to find Kylie and bring her into a plan. "I need to talk to you. This is serious," Sean said when he found Kylie, steering her out of curious sightlines. "Of course. What happened now?" Kylie asked, worried, stepping closer to the table. "We need to turn the tables without giving him the stage he wants," Sean said, trying to line up his thoughts with his courage. "I need you to help me record a conversation with him in the parking lot, with your consent, and I'll take responsibility if it goes wrong," Sean asked, resolved. "I'm in. I won't be complicit by looking the other way," Kylie answered firmly, offering her hand. That night, the parking lot air felt cold, and Kylie propped her phone on the side mirror of the car next to them, the camera discreetly aimed at the spot where Brian parked. "Don't try to act tough, just talk normally and let him say whatever he wants," Kylie whispered, hidden between two cars. Footsteps echoed in the quiet lot. Sean lifted his head and saw Brian striding over, twirling his car key in his fingers like a toy. "Why did you call me?" Brian asked impatiently, stopping in front of him and tossing the key in his hand. "To talk man to man without an audience," Sean answered, meeting his eyes with contained resolve. "Two men? I only see a murderer," Brian said with contempt, tilting his head like he was spitting out the word. "I don't want to run, and I'm not a murderer. I just want to work and let each of us carry our pain without destroying the others," Sean said, not raising his voice, but firm. "You think I hired you out of pity?" Brian sneered. "I brought you here to watch the killer stumble every day," Brian said slowly, savoring each word as a cut. "And if you open your mouth to anyone, your mother will learn what it means to live in fear," Brian whispered, cruel, like he was savoring his own threat. "Do you hear yourself, Brian?" Sean asked, voice low, shocked yet steady. "I hear myself every day, and I'll keep going," Brian answered, sure he was untouchable. Kylie stopped the recording with shaking hands, and the three of them separated without a sound, each carrying their own kind of silence. The next morning, the department felt suspended in hush. People avoided looking at Sean, but they didn't talk to Brian either. Sean took a breath, found his courage, and called his closest co-workers over to his desk. "I need a minute of your attention," Sean asked, hands trembling, his phone at the center of the circle. "I'm going to play an audio clip, and I'll accept whatever comes next," he said, determined, meeting their eyes. "What are you doing?" Brian demanded, coming closer, irritated. "The humiliation is over, Brian," Sean said, not backing up, and hit play. "I brought you here to watch the killer stumble every day." Brian's voice blasted on speaker, clear as a blade. "And if you open your mouth to anyone, your mother will learn what it means to live in fear," the audio repeated, drawing a collective gasp. "That's doctored," Brian shouted, red, veins popping in his neck. "I have the recording on my phone, made last night in the parking lot," Kylie said, raising her phone for all to see. "So it's not just my word. Everything's right here," Sean said, finger poised on the screen. Murmurs rose, words like crime, threat, and cowardice cutting through the air as all eyes turned on the manager. "You're getting it wrong. That was taken out of context," Brian insisted, clawing for footing. "What context justifies threatening a sick woman and toying with other people's fear?" Sean shot back, his voice steady despite his shaking hands. "And the loosened wheel lock?" Sean asked, tossing papers on the counter. "I never touched that chair," Brian snapped, jaw tight. "I saw you prowling the floor before dawn with screws," Adrian said, appearing in the doorway. "You walked past the stockroom twice and left chuckling to yourself," Adrian added, holding his gaze. "Watch yourself, Dorman," Brian threatened, trying to wrest back control through fear. "Threats don't work here anymore," Adrian replied, planted in the doorway. "Either you admit what you did and leave now, or we formalize everything with these recordings," Sean said, staring at the manager without blinking. "Nobody's kicking me out of my office," Brian answered, forcing a smile that convinced no one. "Management will hear this audio in minutes, with witnesses," Kylie said, already typing, finger decisive on the screen. The department head arrived in a hurry, took Kylie's phone, and listened to the audios closely. He lifted his head slowly and faced the group. "This is unacceptable, Brian. You're out of the company," the department head said, making it clear the decision was final. "I'll destroy everything you love. Each one of you will regret this," Brian snarled, clutching his badge like a useless shield. "Threaten all you want. Just go," Sean replied, moving aside with his chair and pointing to the door. Brian walked the hallway under muffled boos and looks of relief, and for the first time in a long while, the air seemed to breathe. That night, Sean closed his eyes without nightmares for the first time in ages, sinking his head into the pillow like he'd finally stopped falling. "I'm thinking about filing a report now. Or if that will just reignite his rage," Sean said to Kylie over the phone, already lying in the dark. "You do what's safest for you and your mom," Kylie answered, her voice lighter than in days. "I think the public exposure of the audio is enough for now," Sean said carefully, weighing each word. "Then rest. Tomorrow we decide the next step calmly," Kylie suggested, steady in her resolve to protect him. "Thank you for not leaving me alone in this hell," Sean said sincerely, feeling his body give in to exhaustion. Sean ended the call, stared at the ceiling in the dark and, convinced the worst had passed, decided not to file the report at that moment, believing Brian's public fall would be enough to end the harassment. The room's silence didn't last, and dawn pushed Sean out of bed before the sun, with the stubborn decision to start the day next to Nicole to prove to himself that peace had returned. "I'll swing by the clinic early and bring that juice she likes," Sean told himself in a low voice, as if the sentence could shield him from what still terrified him. When he reached the clinic, the corridor was calm, but Nicole's bed was empty, sheets smoothed like someone had left in a hurry. "Excuse me, where is the patient from this room?" Sean asked the front desk attendant, an attentive woman who looked up from her computer. "The transfer happened in the middle of the night, sir," the attendant answered, trying to sound routine, but checking the papers again. "Transfer why? Who authorized it?" Sean asked, throat dry, hands sweating on his wheels. "A relative brought the proper paperwork and signed the authorization," the attendant said, checking the system again. "What relative? I'm the only registered contact," Sean shot back, voice firm, feeling the floor drop out from under him without his body moving. "There's a valid signature and ID here, and the protocol is complete," the attendant said, uneasy now, sensing the tension building. "I want to see the cameras now," Sean demanded, heart hammering. "I'll call security to release the footage," the attendant said, reaching for the phone in a hurry. If my mom left, I need to know with whom, where to, and at what time, Sean said, eyes fixed on the black monitor. The hallway image appeared, cold, and Nicole came into view, supported by a man in a cap, slow steps, deliberate gestures. The man raised his face toward the automatic door, and his profile was clear. "It's Brian," Sean said, voice dry, every hair on his body standing on end. His phone buzzed before he could react, Kylie's name lighting up the screen with frantic insistence. "What happened?" Sean asked, already fearing the answer and angling his chair for the exit. "The school called saying my son was picked up by an uncle with a printed authorization that looked perfect. I pushed back. They reviewed the cameras and sent me the footage. Brian took my son," Kylie said, voice shaking like each word was a fall. "My God. He took my mother from the clinic too." "I just saw it on the cameras," Sean said, voice hardening as fear became certainty. "So he has both, your mother and my son," Kylie whispered, and the sob came like a hiccup she tried to swallow. "He must be making good on his promise to get revenge on us. We can't waste time. I'm going straight to the police with you," Sean said, resolved, already turning to leave. At the police station, the front desk felt taller than it was, and Sean rolled up with his face split by urgency. "We're here to report 2 kidnappings," Sean said firmly, holding his phone like living proof. "Who are the victims?" the desk officer asked, looking up. "His mother and my son," Kylie answered, voice breaking as she pointed to Sean and then to herself. "And the suspect?" the officer asked, already grabbing the radio. "Brian, our company's former manager," Sean said, spitting the name like poison. "We have recordings and footage showing him taking both," Kylie added, setting her phone on the desk with trembling hands. "We'll register this as kidnapping and dispatch patrols right now," the officer said, his voice taking on the same urgency as theirs. The next days were pure anguish. Police combed old addresses and cross-checked information, but nothing led to Brian. "I can't think, I can't eat," Kylie said, hands clenched in silence. "He promised to ruin everything I love, and I'm letting it happen," Sean said, gnawed by guilt. With no idea what to do next, Sean stared at the ceiling, and an idea came, pounding at the door in honest desperation. "I need to talk to Trevor," Sean said, remembering Brian's nephew, the son of the woman who died in the crash. "Who's Trevor?" Kylie asked, confused. "He's his sister's son, the kid who grew up without a mother because of the accident," Sean explained, his voice breaking just to say it out loud. "Do you have his contact?" Kylie asked, trying to find a thread that might draw them out of the maze. "I can get it through the school, but I'll need formal permission," Sean said, lifting his head like someone deciding to climb out of the mud. "I'll go with you," Kylie said, firm, grabbing onto the idea like a raft in the middle of the river. At the school office, Sean explained the situation, presented the police report, and asked for a meeting with Trevor, making clear he didn't want to force anything, just ask for help. "I understand how serious this is. I'll bring the young man to the room next door," said the school administrator, a calm woman who chose her words carefully. Trevor arrived with measured steps, a closed face, and a silence that wasn't hostility. "I'm Sean, and thank you for coming," Sean said, voice tight and honest, not dodging his gaze. "I know who you are," Trevor said quietly, without lifting his eyes much. "Then you know the weight I carry," Sean answered, voice shaking. "I never left that crash behind. I lost the use of my legs, but that's nothing compared to knowing your mother died at that intersection. I carry that guilt every day, and I'm sorry for any pain I caused you," Sean said, tears burning with shame and remorse. "I don't have forgiveness to give or refuse," Trevor said, rational but sad, holding his own chest to keep from breaking. "My mom ran the light, the police were clear about that, and I never blamed you for that day," Trevor added, voice firm, steady. "Trevor, that's not the only reason I'm here," Sean said, taking a breath, bracing himself. "Yesterday, your uncle Brian kidnapped my mother from the clinic and took Kylie's son from school." Sean said, voice faltering under the weight of the revelation. But why? Why would he do something like that? Trevor asked, disbelief heavy in his voice. Because he blames me for your mum's death, Sean said, breath heavy. He wants me to pay every day. And now he's attacking the people I love to finish me off, Sean added, voice loaded with pain. My God, Trevor murmured, rubbing his face with both hands, unable to believe it. I don't want violence. I just want to get my mom and Kylie's boy out of wherever they are, Sean said, pleading for a way forward. Before the accident, my uncle was the most protective brother in the world, Trevor said, pulling up memories like photos from an old box. He always talked about a remote farm where they grew up, a place he called a refuge when life got tight, Trevor said, staring at a point outside the room. Do you remember any landmarks? Anything that could point to where it is? Sean asked, clinging to the hope taking shape. I remember a dirt road, thick shade trees, and a shed with a wooden door, Trevor said, trying to rearrange loose pieces. That's more than we had. Police can cross that with records and get close, Kylie said, more upbeat for the first time in days. If you need me in the car to recognize the route, I'll go, Trevor added, showing resolve. At the station, police cross-checked old family properties with Trevor's description. There's a rural plot that matches, a dirt road, a bend under trees, and a shed out back, the police investigator said, showing the document. We're heading out now. No sirens until we have the area surrounded, the on-duty officer ordered, tugging on his vest. I'm coming. I'll recognize the road when it tightens, Trevor said, willing to be their compass. We'll follow in a separate car, Kylie said, grabbing her bag and taking a steadying breath. The dirt road stretched on, and the squad car crawled to keep the dust down. After a quiet while, Trevor leaned forward and signaled with his hand. This is where the shade closes in, the curve I mentioned, Trevor said, pointing through the glass as memory lined up with the present. Up ahead there's a shed with a heavy door, he added, while the radio crackled with instructions. The team sealed off the house in silence, measured steps, each gesture syncing with the next, and the announcement cut the air in a tone that left no room for mistakes. Police, don't move. Hands where we can see them, an officer commanded, a firm voice tying down the chaos. In the back of the shed, Nicole sat in a wicker chair, nervous, eyes wide but unharmed, like surviving was the only job she'd had for days. I'm here, Mom. I'm here, Sean said, voice breaking, close enough for her to feel him without scaring her. Kylie's son trembled in silence, shoulders hunched, learning fast that crying draws danger. Buddy, it's me. Mom's here, Kylie said, voice low and steady, hands reaching slowly so she wouldn't scare him more. Brian stepped out from behind a cabinet with a gun in his hand, face carved by sleepless nights, eyes hollow, like he'd decided the world would hear his pain by force. Nobody move, Brian yelled, the gun shaking more than his voice, rage stitching fear into the same seam. You don't have to do this. No one's going to rush you, Sean said, hands raised, body still, courage steady in his voice. You stole everything from me, and now you want to play peacemaker? Brian shouted, trying to hold on to control that was already slipping. Look at me. I just want to get my mom out of here and take this boy home, Sean said, clear and simple, offering a way out. You're not protecting anyone, Uncle. You're just putting fear where it doesn't belong, Trevor said, taking a careful step forward. Back up, Trevor. Don't get in my way, Brian snapped, the sound more plea than order. You used to tell me about our childhood, Mom laughing in the kitchen, the refuge that was supposed to mean peace, not prison, Trevor said, tugging gently at the thread of memory. She isn't here to defend me, so I defend myself, Brian answered, chin trembling on the edge of tears. Mom didn't want revenge. She taught me not to cause pain to anyone, Trevor said, calm inside the storm, holding his uncle's eyes like a mirror. I can't come back from what I lost, Brian whispered, the gun dipping a fraction, like his arm was tired of holding up what his heart couldn't. You can choose what you do now, Sean said, firm, his voice stretched between fear and hope. Let Nicole stand up. Let my son walk to me, and step away from this without hurting anyone, Kylie asked, eyes locked on Brian's face, not on the gun. The gun lowered slowly, like each inch was a forgiveness he didn't know how to give himself, and the room's silence made more noise than any scream. The officers moved in carefully, trained motions built not to spark, and the cuffs clicked shut without fanfare, just the metal sound that ends fights that went on too long. Look at me, Mom. It's over, Sean said, leaning his forehead to hers, and Nicole cried, a cry like water returning to its riverbed. My boy, my love, I'm here, Kylie said, hugging her son tight, apologizing for all the fear he'd had to carry quietly. I didn't want it to be like this, Trevor said, looking at his uncle with a mix of pity and exhaustion, heart split between memory and what it had become. In the days that followed, the explanation arrived stamped in a report, not as an excuse, but as a portrait of a collapse fed for a very long time. Psychiatrists documented untreated trauma, frozen grief, and delusions he fed until he broke every limit, the police investigator told Sean and Kylie, summarizing the document. The papers used to remove Nicole from the clinic and Kylie's son from school were forged to perfection, the police investigator explained, showing the technical details. The court ordered him committed to a secure psychiatric facility with continuous supervision and a standing order keeping him away from you both, the officer reported, delivering the measure that shut the door on fear. Outside the station, Sean and Kylie thanked Trevor. You helped save my mother and her son, Sean said, moved. I just did what my mom taught me. The right thing, Trevor answered simply. Back at the office, management gathered everyone and got straight to the point. This wasn't a workplace issue, it was persecution. Safety protocols were put in place, justice was served, and there was no more room for silence. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, give it a like, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. See you in the next story.